Hey guys, new video. This is going to be an update to Cospris for 3.0. There's a few changes, primarily life-based, mostly using Lycosidase shield. So I'm going to go over this build, and then you can refer to the old video if you want to see the older version. Okay, so first, as always, we're going to do a few maps. Let me just get a few in here. Racecourse, I think, is a good show. Don't mind the items. They're skins. They're not the actual items. I'll go over everything in more detail later, but I always think that it's important to get the gameplay going first, because without the gameplay, if you don't even know if you want to play the build, then it might not be worth it. Also, my input is still for wander, so this should be correct. Okay, there we go. So let's go ahead and do a map so you can see how the build looks. And as you can see, it's just discharging all over the place. We're using a Vol's Devotion Amulet. I am using all 3 charges, partially getting frenzy charges from Poacher's Mark in Herald of Ice. Curse on hit. Now you don't have to do that. I'll explain why I do that later. It's more of a just like a fun factor. But you can go, a thing that's kind of cool about this build, this league, is that you can go power charges and no endurance charges. If you want to use a Bisco's, very powerful item, you can use both power charges and endurance charges. If you want to use a Vol's Devo, it'll also shore up your res, gives a little bit of life, pretty good item as well. Or you can go all 3, right, just for like more colorful explosions. Maybe it just feels better having a few endurance charges, and they all have their pros and cons, which I will go over later. Let me just finish this. I know I'm not clearing the race course efficiently, but I'm just like trying to record. So there's that boss. This guy's like a little reflect action, and so damage is like okay, right? I'm gonna do another map here. Let's do like more monster life. Why not? I just kind of pre-rolled these at random, so forgive me if the map mods aren't exactly the best or what you were hoping to see with this build. But as you can see, it doesn't really lack in terms of speed. It's similar to the auto bomber guide I have. For some reason, I'm kind of laggy right now. That's very strange. Maybe it's the servers this morning. It is Friday morning that I'm making this video. Maybe with a lot of people playing, the servers have gone to poop a little bit. But here we go. I'm gonna go back over here, and we'll clear. Now I am using a Headhunter, but you definitely don't need it. A very popular option right now is the Flow Untethered belt. So as you can see, like with the Headhunter, it's all about the speed, right? Like I'm just I'm like Sonic right now, just zooming around the map, things that slow you down. I mean, Harbinger is like fun, even though it slows you down a lot. I think it's definitely worth doing for the fun aspect of it. So we cleared that. Let me go ahead and clear the boss. Yeah, here we go, with my buffs active. And as you can see, it's similar. The clear speed is similar to last time, even without all the Headhunter buffs. And that is the demo. So let's start talking about the build. I'm going to give a brief overview of what has changed since the last video from, I think my video was 2.5 that I last made a video about this, but the core items are still the same. You're using a Cospris Malice Jeweled Foil, and then a Vol's Protector. These are like the, you would say, key items on the build. The absolutely necessary, no questions about it, because every time you crit, you get a power charge. And for those of you guys, maybe like newer players that don't know Discharge, it expends all kinds of charges, all of them when it procs, to deal massive amounts of damage. At this point, I think it's by far the highest base damage in the entire game if you're using both or any 2 kind of charges. And then what this item does is when you crit on a melee attack, you're going to trigger a cold gem. Because Discharge is classified as fire, cold, and lightning, it works. And so this has a limit of 4 discharges per second, and the cast on crit gem that you use for the discharge in the chest has a limit of 2 per second. This used to be like 20 per second, so a little bit of a nerf there. This item used to be like 10 per second, but that's been nerfed, but still works out okay. Big changes, once again, going back to what I was saying earlier, is now we are life-based. you know, we used to be CI, Ghost Reaver. We get about 8, 9K with good gear. Now, as you can see, I'm at 5.3K with like the best of the best life gear. You might be pushing 6K. I think that's possible, but I was looking on PoE Trade as of 2 months into the league, and it's a little bit iffy with the items. It's very hard to find. So we're going life based. As you can see, I don't have the normal like accuracy nodes. I don't have depth perception there. I do have precision, but that's mostly just for the attack speed and cast speed. Excuse me. And so what we're doing is you try to get life on your helm. You try to get life on your Elrion ring, the Lycosidae is a big part of this because you get a decent amount of life on there, but hits can't be evaded is so important because when it calculates crits, it has to roll for the hit and then it has to roll for the crit. So, you know, you're basically squaring your chance if you don't have 100%. Now, the boots, I'm using Death's Door. Another option is Inya's, the new item from Pale Council, where when you gain a power charge, I believe you have a 25% chance to gain full power charges. And as Assassin, you get 7 power charges. So that can be kind of nice as well. Give me 1 second here. Man, my alarm is going off in the background. Let me go grab that real quick. Be right back. Okay, sorry about that. I can cut that part out of the video. So going forward, gloves, we have Insanity gloves. That's going to be pretty important for this build, just because you want to shield charge around as much as possible. Belt, either Flow Untethered is an option, or you can use a Headhunter. Flow Untethered is obviously the cheaper option, but you don't even need to use that. If you're lacking in resists, you can use a rare belt with flask charges reduced, flask charge duration, things like that. Now, the rings, I would say you don't even need -8s. -7s are probably fine. But this helps because if you look right here, my shield charge is free, right? So you're going to shield charge around for free. Map mods like 60%, 6% less regen and things like that won't be a big deal. The Cyclone usually is 11 mana. This one's 9 because I have a multiplier chest that I evolved myself. But even Cyclone's not that bad with a +2 mana gained for each enemy hit jewel. The Amulet, we could talk about that again. Evol's Devotion, I'm using it just because at this point I don't really care about money. So I'm not using a Biscos, and this gives resist, which is kind of hard to get on this build in terms of capping it. Now you do have flasks that help with that and purities, but still resists are a little bit iffy with the build. So this helps 40 life, and then I have a +1 max resist because that's basically like a less modifier to the damage that you take. Other than that, Helm, I'm using the chance for Discharge not to consume charges. This is just kind of, you're rolling the RNG. I think if you get like a 40% Discharge Helm, it's just a more of a flat damage increase, and overall it's slightly more damage more consistently. But I like to roll the RNG wheel, and when this procs and your Discharge doesn't consume charges, it's a lot of bursty damage. So I enjoy that, but not completely necessary. Other things, we'll talk about flasks. Have to have a grounding flask because you're using a Vinctars. If you shock yourself, you're just gonna die. So definitely get a flask of grounding. Diamond flask. The prefix, it doesn't matter. You can use chemists for you can use it twice, and that last use in those scenarios comes up faster. But experimenters is totally fine as well. Dying Sun is just for AoE. I'm trying to squeeze out every bit of AoE I can just because it doesn't feel good otherwise. I actually re-roll less area of effect map mods because it just feels so awful. There's like other builds you could be playing if your AoE is not good, right? Quicksilver Flask of Adrenaline. Alchemist has the prefix just to move faster. And then the Alchemist Sulfur Flask of Heat. See, this one right here, This is because you need some kind of freeze immunity, and I don't need a staunching flask because I have Death's Door, right? So I get a little bit of freedom. I just chose to go with the damages here, right? And I mean, I take the Alchemist node, so all my flasks get buffed up a little bit. So it's like a significant amount of damage. And then of course the big one here, this one you absolutely must have. This is the Vinctar. This is how you don't die to Reflect. There is also another way you help with your Reflect, and has Life Leech in here, but I'll talk about gem setup later. Vessel of Vinctar is a huge amount of leech, 20% of lightning damage, and if you look at your Discharge gem, if you look at that base lightning damage per power charge, that's massive. So you really need this flask. Penetration is the best. If you cannot afford penetration, I think they should all be like the same price. The only expensive one now is, I think, added to attacks, but that's not what you want for this build. So this one should be pretty cheap. Get penetration. But for whatever reason, if you already have a added to spells lying around, you can use that one as well if you don't want to spend the monies, right? So flask, pretty simple there. Let's talk about the gem links. So once again, the way that Cospri's works is every time you crit, it's a melee critical strike, so that would be Cyclone and it would be Shield Charge. You're going to proc this. And in the Discharge, this is essentially a one link. That's how much damage Discharge does. When you're shield charging around, you're proccing a one link Discharge because I have Ink AoE, and yeah, it's got quality, right? So it's like 10% increased air damage, but that's like nothing. So this is just to make your clear a little bit smoother. And then this, when your Life Leech is linked to your Discharge, because these two will sync up, the chest and the weapon, you're almost always going to get the benefit from this Life Leech to protect you from Reflect. There are certain fringe cases where it will not, which is really scary, but we can talk about that later. So Life Leech just for protection. So one link Discharge is more than enough to clear the maps here. Other substitutes, if you want to go completely YOLO and you don't care about dying and stuff like that, you can go Controlled Destruction. You can go like anything else you want, really, but I wouldn't recommend it. You die a lot. Gloves, since you have Insanity Clouds, which is a more multiplier to your attack and cast speed for socketed gems, you're gonna want a Shield Charge. Shield Charge linked with Fortify, because Fortify will protect you from Reflect as well. This is like a huge buff to your survivability. And since you're always shield charging around, and like the only way you proc your Discharge is by attacking, and you're always repositioning with shield charge as well, you're almost always going to have this up. And then the next one is Faster Attacks. I actually forgot to GCP this one, but I'll do that later. Faster Attacks 2023 is the best numbers you can get on that. Obviously no explanation needed. You just attack faster because you attack faster, and Shield Charge is scaled off attack speed and move speed. You go faster and you clear the map faster. Okay, this one, increased critical strikes. You definitely want to crit as much as you can. The base for this is 35, and I know there's like more multipliers here in terms of crits for full life and low life, but just to make it more smooth, get the increased crit. You can also play around with increased area of effect. That is definitely something that you can think about, because the nerf to AoE, like people think, oh yeah, like the Discharge and like the Dying Sun stuff, everything's nerfed. Shield Charge also got nerfed, right, with the AoE changes. So because of that, like gone are the days where you charge down the middle of a corridor and then like everything blows up. You don't have to like aim your shield charge, but you need to pay more attention with like how close you're charging to the packs, because sometimes it won't proc because AoE is so garbage now. So try AoE as well. If you feel that that's okay, you can use that as well. So with the helm, I'm using Purity of Fire. So max res is so important. Once you have 75 resist, every like the next percent past 75 is 4% less damage. The next percent after that is more than that in terms of a less multiplier from the point before. So every bit of max res you get will protect you from Reflect. Reflect is just the ultimate challenge for this build, and I don't think that going Scion, like if you play softcore, going Scion Ascendant, you can get 100% Reflect immunity, but then the build doesn't feel that great to me. You can test it out though if you want. So Purity of Fire and Purity of Lightning give me max res and the resist I need. If you look right here, see I'm capped, but without the purities, I am actually not capped. So definitely important to have that. Enlighten. You don't need an Enlighten 4. Enlighten 3 is totally fine. And I just have a summon Lightning Golem here for attack and cast speed. And cast speed is actually really nice for Vol Haste, which is right here. Vol Haste is linked to increased duration and faster casting. Now, at first I was like, faster casting, I probably won't make that big a deal, but it's huge. Being able to cast your Vol Haste that much quicker, you avoid any kind of stuns that could come out in that little cast animation, and it makes you going from shield charge to Vol Haste into shield charging again. It's so much smoother. I know it might not seem like a big deal, but definitely link it to Vault faster casting if you're going to do this setup. And then increase duration just to make it last a little bit longer. No explanation needed there. A swap you can do in this is you can use a 3 red socket link for cast when damage taken, Immortal Call, and Warlord's Mark 120. And if you have a level 1 CWDT, you can use a level 5 Warlord's Mark, and you can use a level 3 Immortal Call. Everyone is trying to buy items right now. Sorry about that, guys. This is like a one take. And so you can put that there. If you are to do that, then you will not go faster casting. You'll go increased duration, Vol Haste in the boots, and then you'll have Herald of Ice with Onslaught. So let's talk about this next. I think the only like mandatory thing is Herald of Ice for pseudo cleanup and pseudo AoE. If your discharge shatters on the edge of the discharge range, the Herald of Ice adds another amount of AoE at the edge, and that's really nice. And then also cleaning up like stragglers is nice as well. See, you used to use like a Keanu's, right, for like the stun protection, but without a silver flask, we can just use an Onslaught gem, totally fine. And it has basically, from what I've seen, 100% uptime. You can take a look at the map runs earlier in the video to double check. And I decided to use Curse on Hit, Poacher's Mark. Now you do not have to do this. This is like very, very iffy. It has some dangers to it. Poacher's Mark, the reason I put it on there is because I liked having an extra charge like in between packs. If you somehow get those frenzies, you know, you're going a little bit faster, right? Which is nice. And then the cold damages, a little bit extra damage is nice as well. But mainly, Poacher's Mark, when it hits, you're going to get your Vingtars back faster. Okay, like if Vingtars is up, you are most of the time going to be extremely safe. When Vingtars is down, you're always going to be scared. And because of that, Poacher's Mark helps you fill this up, and you can be a little bit more mindless with the build. But you definitely don't need this, okay? Remember, if you don't use Curse on Hit, Poacher's Mark, put your Vol Haste, increased duration in those two instead. Run a 3-link cast when damage taken, Immortal Call, Warlord's Mark setup. It will be very safe. And then now the big part of the build for single target is the chest. I have a link to Cyclone. Cyclone attacks incredibly fast. It is darn near impossible not to crit. If you are cycloning at your feet like this, it is almost impossible not to crit, especially if you have like all your speed activated and everything. Because of that, when you do cast on crit, every 2 seconds, this discharge is going to go off. Okay, and so 2 discharges going off with this Helm enchant with chance not to consume, it's a lot of damage. Now, cast on crit, discharge, this is conk effect because for clearing, you're not using Cyclone, not really. This is like for sometimes some rares and for bosses, so you don't care about the AoE. So conk effect is a big damage boost. Increased critical strikes, no explanation needed. You want to crit on your Cyclone as much as possible, and also helps discharge. And then this last socket, so this one is also, you have options here. I chose Firestorm because when you get to a boss, the charge generation, I was looking at in the top left at my power charges, without this, it wasn't as smooth as I'd like without Firestorm. So with this, it'll like pepper the area with a lot of hits, and then once again, with the Vol's Protector, with a lot of hits comes a lot of crits, which comes a lot of power charges, so smoothness. You can swap this out for Elemental Focus if you'd like. Elemental Focus, if you're one-shotting rares, and obviously if you're one-shotting rares, you're one-shotting whites and blues, on Cyclone, the burst will be higher with an Elemental Focus, right? Because why do you need Firestorm for power charges if you one-shot the rare? So that's another thing you can try out. I've tried out both for quite a few maps, and I personally like Firestorm. Other than that, I think that's all the gear options here. Once again, Death's Door is just because I don't have to roll Staunching. It's really nice, and it's resist, and it's +1 endurance charge, right? So more damage there. But you can go Inya's Boots if you want, and that allows you to use Abysscos. You might have to do some resist on gems. No, not on gems, jewels, if you want to do that. Because resist, once again, are super iffy on the build. So if you look at the tree, it is quite similar to the old one. You'll notice that, see, this is the thing I really don't like about the ES changes. You have to take so many life nodes here, right? Like before you were taking witch nodes here, you were taking the things behind CI, you like took these 2 points. You took a few points here, Foresight, with the option of going down here, and you took Nullification, stuff like that. Now you have to take Blood Drinker. I'm taking Blood Siphon instead of going down through Nullification here. Oh yeah, of course you took Witch Note as well. Now I have to go like 4 points here into Cruel Prep. I'm gonna take this point next, Quick Recovery. I'm going all the way down here into Constitution and the Silent Life Wheel. I take 2 extra points of love here. I have to take these 3 points here. It's just, it's a little bit, the points are a little bit spread. They're spread a little bit thin, but it's fine. You just take the life where you can. Try to get like 5k life, and the rest of the tree is exactly the same as it was before. You take Elemental Equilibrium because this has cold damage to everything, so you're always, the vast majority of the time, you're going to hit them with the cold, making them vulnerable to fire and lightning, and then your discharge is going to blow up and do a lot more damage, right? Intuitive Leap is required right here. If you can afford it, Intuitive Leap with Cannot Be Silenced will be a lot of safety. I can't tell you how many times I've run into a ghost pack where I cannot discharge, and you don't even realize it before you start taking damage, and that's really scary. Overall, I wouldn't recommend the build for hardcore. Reason being, like, I'm running Poacher's Mark, so sometimes the frenzy charges, because I don't have max res on the cold resistance, that extra little bit of reflected damage can sometimes booty blast me, and that's not fun at all. What else is there to talk about here on the skill tree? That's about it. You're taking Ball Pack still, Jewels. Jewels, like, when you make your filter for Jewels, it's huge. It's like so many different mods, like crit multi with all the different elements, global crit multi, area damage, attack speeds. I went with more attack speed Jewels, as you can see. Reason being is you want it to feel fast, right? That's part of the build. If you're one-shotting everything, you don't need that much damages. Leveling the build, I always level as Aberrass Hooves, and then I respec into this, but the Aberrass Hooves leveling tree is like pretty much this. So that wasn't that big of a deal. And other than that, that's about it. Reiterating TLDR of the big changes from the previous iteration of this build is Lycosidae, so you do not have to take any accuracy and like depth perception, and you don't have to roll accuracy on the Elrion rings. Accuracy, like, well, tier 1 for what the Elrion max level is, I think it's like 200, around 200 accuracy maybe, and getting that on rings, it's either going to be so expensive or it doesn't exist in a temporary league at this point anyways, because people have quit the league. So it's this just gives you you can just breathe easy knowing that you don't need to worry about accuracy. You can try Esh's Mirror if you want. I don't think there's any reason to. You can try other things, and once again, life-based build. So yeah, nothing too much else to say. This is an okay build. My opinions on it are, because Wander exists, build is just okay. If you like the MTX, it does have Flare Discharge, reduces lag, or maybe not lag, it reduces stutter. You have better FPS with Flare Discharge, so I use that. And yeah, overall it costs about, Mathel's playing like a Cospri, so that's going to be a little bit expensive. I think like 10 to 20 exalts, totally fine. You don't need a Headhunter at all. And that's that. If you have any questions, you can like ask below, and we can talk about it. All right, thanks guys. Bye.